about a year ago. One of these poems is called Education Ain't Everything. 1 and 1 are 2, 2 and 2 are 4. I only wish to goodness that there wasn't any more. Adding and subtracting, really what's the use? When Winston Churchill went to school, they say he was a goose. Yet he became Prime Minister and helped us win the war. That's 'cause he didn't waste his time on 2 and 2 are 4. Carrington Briggs, hero and mother. Oh, it wasn't easy, I tell you. Carrington Briggs cared not 2 figs whether he lived or died. But when he was dead, he laid on his bed, and he cried, and he cried, and he cried. For about 10 years, I've been assiduously collecting a very bad verse, mostly by writing it myself. And I think I've come across 2 here which really are the worst I've ever read. This is truth. Go help me. It's called On Seeing a Corpse by Charles Wesley. Oh, it's good to have friends, isn't it? Oh, lovely appearance of death. What sight upon earth so fair? Not all the gay pageants that breathe can with a dead body compare. How about that, eh? Now, the second is a couplet on the death of Queen Victoria by a Hindu poet called Mr. Panditji Banerjee. He says, dust to dust and ashes to ashes. Into the tomb, the great queen dashes. Oh, dear. Isn't it hell? Today I saw a little worm wriggling on his belly. Perhaps you'd like to come inside and see what's on the telly. Good evening. Once again, Muses with Milligan. Or, for a start, Muses with Milligan. I must go down to the sea again, to the lonely sea in the sky. I left my vest and socks there. I wonder if they're dry. Now then, this is a poem about a burning church. I've called it Holy Smoke. Steady now. I am the vicar of St. Paul's, and I'm ringing the steeple bell. The floor of the church is on fire, or the lid has come off hell. Shall I call the fire brigade, or shall I trust in the Lord? Oh dear, I've just remembered. I don't think we're insured. Now what's this, said the fire chief. Is this church C.O.V.? It is, then we can't put it out. My lads are all R.C. There you see, I'm not just a pretty face. Any questions? Any money? Among my hobbies, I collect the last words of famous people. There's been a great shortage lately, not only of last words, but of great people. And here are the last crop that I managed to get from a magazine. The last words of Gladstone. I feel better now. Isn't that hell? Somebody had news for him. And Florence Nightingale, even better. I smell burning. Which way are you going, dear? Now, folks, stand by. There was a young woman of Kent who said she knew what it meant. When men asked her to dine, gave her gin, rum and wine, she knew what it meant, but she went. And now, this little poem of mine called The King of China. Ah, boy, it often. Let me start. I have never felt finer, said the King of China, sitting down to dine. Then he fell down dead. He died, he did. It was only 9:30. To follow up rapidly. 30,000 savages sitting down to lunch. Gobble, gobble, glup, glup, munch, munch, munch. It's funny, I tell you. It is. And it's too good for you folks. And now I'll give there's a little story I saw here. So it says a baby sardine saw a submarine and asked his mother what it was. And she said, it's a tin full of people, dear. It's funny, I tell you, it's funny. I tell you, I need... Right then, here's an unusual limerick. It's written by Peter Sellers, Harry Seeker and myself in the early days. It was written by writing one line, then folding it over, and telling the man the last word of the line, so he knew the rhyming word. And this is what came out, believe it or not. There was a young man of Bombay on a slow boat to China one day. He was trapped in the tiller by a sex-crazed gorilla, and China's a long, long way.
People who live in glass houses should pull the blinds before removing their trousers. No? Right, keep going. Hello, folks, and if you don't like me, goodbye. It's Muses with Milligan again. Yes, again. Isn't it hell, folks?
Say Bozanka every day. That's what my grandma used to say. It keeps at bay the Asian flu and both your elbows free from glue. So say Bozanka every day. That's what my grandma used to say. Don't say it if your socks are dry or when the sun is in your eye. Never say it in the dark. The word you see emits a spark. Only say it in the day. That's what my grandma used to say. Young Tiny Tim took her advice. He said it once, he said it twice. He said it till the day he died. And even after that he tried to say Bozanka every day. Just like my grandma used to say. Oh, it's hell, folks. Now, folks around declare it's true that every night at 2:30, if you will stand upon your head and say Bozanka from your bed, you'll hear the word as clear as day, just like my grandma used to say.
And now I'm going to read a little poem which I wrote for my daughter Celia when she had measles. She was very depressed, you know. I wrote this little poem. It's called Contagion.
Elephants are contagious. Be careful how you tread. An elephant that's been trodden on should be confined to bed. Leopards are contagious too. Be careful, tiny tots. They don't give you a temperature, but lots and lots of spots. The herring is a lucky fish, from all disease inured. Should he be ill when caught at sea, immediately he's cured.
Right, thank you. Just leave the money. A poem here by an English poet called Alan Crick. And I think it's very funny. It's called Bruno Pym. I often think of Bruno Pym, and I wonder what became of him. He always was evolving schemes far wilder than your wildest dreams, and once he lit with phosphorus a lighthouse in the Bosphorus. Soon afterwards, they said that he was harnessing the bumblebee and utilizing bamboo shoots to make elastic-sided boots.
You wear them, do you?
Then he, 'twas hardly rational, rode yaks in the Grand National. Dispirited, he made at home a giant silent metronome, and next was seen in New Orleans outdistancing some runner beans. He then wrote his biography, entitled Pym's Cosmography. This work, 12 volumes, did not sell, alas, particularly well. And so disgruntled, he then planned to make explosives out of sand. Rumor has it he succeeded and reached the moon quite unimpeded. If you go there, you'll see him, folks. You're all on your own, dear. Now, there was a young Hindu called Gandhi who went in the bar for a shandy. With his great loincloth, he wiped off the froth. And the barman said, "Blimey, that's handy." It's the simple ones that go. A little poem I wrote here for children. It's called the Bongaloo. Why, I don't know. What is a Bongaloo, Daddy? A Bongaloo, son, said I, is a tall bag of cheese, plus a Chinaman's knees, and the leg of a nanny goat's eye. How strange is a Bongaloo, Daddy? As strange, I replied. When the sun's in the west, he appears in his vest, sailing out with the noonday tide. What shape is a Bongaloo, Daddy? The shape, my son, I'll explain. It's tall round the nose, which continually grows in the general direction of Spain. Are you sure there's a Bongaloo, Daddy? Am I sure, my son, said I? Why, I've seen it not quite on a dark, sunny night. Do you think that I'd tell you a lie? Thank you. You'll all get your money back, I swear. In every poem, I like to include some bad verse because unwittingly these men subscribe to laughter even though they don't know it. Here is one by an American poet.
The Frog by James K. Hemmer. The frog, he sits upon the bank and catches bugs and flies. And after he gets tired of that, he just jumps in and dives.
Just a barracks, folks. All these recruits are lining up for a new folk. Lady Barnaby takes her ease, knitting overcoats for fleas. By this kindness, fleas are smitten. That's why she's very rarely bitten. That's known as dying the death. And here's some more deaths. Lord Finchley tried to mend the electric light himself. It struck him dead. Serves him right. 'Tis the duty of the businessman
to give employment to the artisan. And here's an epitaph to a dentist in Whetstone Cemetery that I found. Stranger approach this grave with gravity. Charles Gray is filling his last cavity. Now, there's a little verse I wrote for my youngest daughter when she had measles when she was very young, and she didn't understand what measles were, so I invented a disease for her. I called it the Tootsie Cana. When the Tootsie Cana comes, hide behind your grandma's thumbs. Place a teapot on your head, stay indoors, go to bed. If the Tootsie Cana will not go, stick a jelly on his toe. Buy a kipper, painted red, Tootsie Cana falls down dead.
Amen.
I suppose most fathers are plagued by their children's asking them questions, and I wrote a little poem. It's called Quostions.
Daddy, how does an elephant feel if he swallows a piece of steel? Does he get drunk and fall on his trunk and roll down the road like a wheel? Daddy, what would a pelican do if he swallowed a bottle of glue? Would his beak get stuck? Would he run out of luck and lose his job at the zoo? Son, tell me, do, if I belted you with a shoe, would you go up to bed? Would you fall down dead? Either of those would do.
Perhaps if I see it. Thank you. You'll all get your license money back, folks.
Now, there's a little poem I wrote about the wind and granny. I wrote this for children, naturally enough. It's called The Wind and Granny.
Through every nook and every cranny, the wind blew in on poor old granny. Around her knees, into each ear, and up her nose as well, I hear. All through the night the wind grew worse, it even made our vicar curse. The top had fallen off the steeple, striking him and other people. Oh, it blew on man, it blew on beast, it blew on nun, it blew on priest. It blew the drawers off Auntie Fanny, but most of all, it blew on Granny.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope you know what you're doing. There's another little poem here. It's by a chap called Anon, who's making a name for himself. A simple young fellow from Hyde in a funeral procession was spied. When asked who is dead, he just tittered and said, I don't know, I just came for the ride.
The boy stood on the burning deck, whence all but he had fled. Twit. Good evening, my name is Muses with Milligan, but we can still be friends, folks. Dr. Odell fell down a well and broke his collarbone, but doctors should attend the sick and leave the well alone. Any questions? No. By permission of the National Health Service, I'm going to read to you Edward Lear's The Duck and the Kangaroo. For any of you who are finicky, I should switch off. Said the duck to the kangaroo, good gracious, how you hop over the fields and the water too, as if you would never stop. My life is a bore in this nasty pond, and I long to go out in the world. I wish I could hop like you, said the duck to the kangaroo. Please give me a ride on your back, said the duck to the kangaroo. I will sit quite still and say nothing but quack the whole of the long day through. And we'd go to the Dee and the Jelly Bowlee, over the land and over the sea. Please take me a ride, oh do, said the duck to the kangaroo. Said the kangaroo to the duck, this requires some little reflection. Perhaps on the whole it might bring me luck. And there seems to be one objection, which is, if you'll let me speak so bold, your feet are unpleasantly wet and cold, and would probably give me the rheumatiz, said the kangaroo. Said the duck, as I sat on the rocks, I had thought over that completely, and I bought 4 pairs of worsted socks, which fit my webbed feet neatly. And to keep out the cold, I've brought a cloak, and every day a cigar I'll smoke, all to follow my own dear true love of a kangaroo. Said the kangaroo, I'm ready, all in the moonlight pale, but to balance me well, dear duck, sit steady and quite still on the end of my tail. So away they went with a hop and a bound, and they hopped the world 3 times around. And who so happy, oh who, as the duck and the kangaroo?
Meantime, back at the ranch, an author wrote an asterisk, and he kept it in his den, where he wrote tales which had large sales of naughty girls and men. And always when he reached a point wherein the censors lurk, he'd call upon that asterisk to do his dirty work. This little story I wrote is based upon fact. It's called The Great Man. The scene is Pune in India, 1927. My uncle was a great man. He told me so himself. He said, I am a great man. And you can't argue with facts like that. He was a tall, handsome, cross-eyed man with eczema, which he was very proud of, as he'd had it blessed by the Pope. He also walked with a pronounced limp. L-I-M-P, pronounced limp. He was plagued with a completely bald head. When he folded his arms, he looked like the pirate flag. Hope came one day when a holy Hindu man said, for 10 rupees, I can cure the European gentleman's head of the dreaded baldness. Now, the treatment involved the great man sitting naked in a darkened room with a mixture of cow dung and treacle spread on his head. Stay in there for 3 days, said the holy man. My uncle did. It didn't work. My uncle hit the holy man. And then he ripped off his loincloth. Alas, the poor Hindu died of indecent exposure. Uncle took to wearing an auburn wig. One day, a hawk swooped down and removed it. In a hairless frenzy, Uncle swore, threw rocks, his boots, his dentures, and part of his truss. But, alas, the hawk flew beyond his reach. Carrying a ladder and wearing a handkerchief over his clawed head, he searched every bird's nest for 50 miles around, but to no avail. Years later, a Burmese naturalist reported a strange find. A hawk's nest made from an auburn wig. Even stranger, it wasn't my uncle's. And
Ding dong dell. Pussy's in the well. Well, put some disinfectant down, because we can't stand the smell.
reeks the goat on yonder hill, and he so fond of chlorophyll. Greeting to the devotees of Noises with Nottingham, the program with a plastic audience. And now, naughty me. I eat my peas with honey. I've done it all my life. It makes the peas taste funny, but it keeps them under knife. It's a little poem I wrote, a book of children's verse. So think as the young now. Hello, splendid guardsman, in your scarlet coat. It reaches from below your tum to halfway up your throat. Tell me, splendid guardsman, when you're not on parade, what kind of clothes do you put on? Civvies, I'm afraid. That's the sort of poem that grows on you. If it grew on me, I'd chop it off, I tell you that. King David and King Solomon led very merry lives with very many lady friends and twice as many wives.
But when old age crept over them with many, many qualms, King Solomon wrote the Proverbs while King David wrote the Psalms.
There was a young lady of Tottenham who'd no manners, or else she'd forgotten them. At tea at the vicar's, she tore off her knickers because she explained she felt autumn. Steady now, settle down. Think about it later. Hallelujah! Can we say more? It's a story from a Dublin paper. I was in Ireland last year. I don't know what for, but I was there. By the way, the prefix of the story is that in 1927, I think it was 1927, a man called Carter discovered the tomb of King Tutankhamun. And legend has it that on the entrance to the king's chamber, there was a curse. Well, strange enough, after the opening of this tomb, several people associated with the excavation died, among them Lord Carnarvon, who sponsored the whole idea. And of course, the legend went on, there was a curse on this tomb. Well, as I say, last month I was in Dublin, I picked up a County Wexford paper, and there was a story. Some man, I think it was called a chap called Alfred Gray, who'd been a field worker during the excavation on this site, had died at the age of 98. And the headline said, "The curse still rings true." One of my children was very puzzled, a little boy, very small, was puzzled as to why he couldn't lift his sister up, because she could lift him up. Even she was big, you see, and he was tiny, and he tried to do the same to her, and he couldn't imagine it. And I've written a little poem, the last line of which is what he surmised the whole situation was. My sister Laura's bigger than me and lifts me up quite easily. I can't lift her, I've tried and tried. She must have something heavy inside. Isn't that nice? She said it, not me. Now, I haven't told my God. Oh, I don't know how we get away with it, you know. I knew a young poet called Wyatt, whose voice was remarkably quiet. And then one day, it faded away. I'm thankful that the sun and moon are both hung up so high, so no pretentious hand can stretch and pull them from the sky. If they were not, I have no doubt some local council ass would recommend to
take them down and light the world with gas. Get with it with gas. We must go forward with the gas, folks. Keep taking gas.
When I was in Dublin last year, you remember this, I had a very good drinking session with some Jesuits, and we got to talking about each other, you know, and about sin and so on. We found out, I said, what is sin? What is good? What is bad? And he said, well, give me an example. So I said, well, is it wrong to look at naked women? And he said, of course it is, otherwise we'd all be doing it. Well, that's... It's the truth, it's the truth.